Hi, my name's JV. It's been a while since I posted a video, so I wanted to do a quick one based on a question I got from a friend of mine asking. It's kind of an interesting question. She asks, um, so apparently she had been told that the demons can read our writing, and so that we shouldn't write anything that gives away our emotions or thoughts. Also, the same with facial expressions and spoken words, that we should be very careful about that because the demons can use them against us. Now, of course, one should always be careful in terms of watching one's thoughts and watching what one expresses. Um, we have a lot of spiritual counsel on guarding your words, guarding your thoughts and guarding your words. Like, even if you think bad thoughts, don't let it out. At least that. But the goal is, of course, to drive away all the tempting thoughts that come from the demons or from our own, you know, messed up passions and so on. But there's a couple things about this question that I think are worth talking about, at least briefly. So, one of them is that demons and angels don't have literal eyes and ears. They perceive spiritually. Um, they're spirits. They're not bodies. So they're not perceiving us through the same means we perceive things. Um, we can't know exactly how they're perceiving things spiritually. Saint Theophan the Recluse in On the Spiritual Life and How to Be Attuned to It kind of describes it like they can see sort of at and through things. So with angels, that's a cause for them to glorify God, and the angels are pure and light, and the demons are dark and smoky and all that kind of thing. So, and we kind of become either more bright or dark on the spiritual plane by our own actions. So they perceive that way. And so I think it's better to think of the way that they get um, information about us as not so much that they're spying on our mail or reading our diaries and stuff like that, or listening in on our conversations. I mean, they do all of those things to an extent, but again, it's not sort of this literal perception thing. Um, we can't know exactly what they think, but I think if you want an idea of like how angels and demons might perceive something, I think it probably falls more on the intuitive level, the noetic level of how we operate. This is all kind of vague and speculation. I'm mostly basing my thoughts on Saint Theophan, but and from some hints we get from the lives of the saints in similar material. But think of think of how we just know the mood of people that we know well when we walk into a room. Like walk into a room, your mom is happy, so you ask, "Oh, what happened to you? That was so good." Or you walk into a room and your father's grumpy and upset, and it's just in the air around him. There's nothing specific necessarily, but you can just feel it in the air, so to speak. Or like when you're in an argument with somebody, you might be able to instinctively sense what's going to hurt them more. Obviously, we should refrain from bad use of these things. We should be trying to help each other and so on. But I'm just giving you an idea of how spiritual perception might work. Again, it's very vague. We don't have very good language for it because pretty much all of our language is about our sense perceptions. On the note of things written down, though, and diaries and that sort of thing, diaries have been used, diaries and autobiographical writings have been used very profitably by people in the church throughout history. We have I have three really great examples of sort of diary biographical material. Of course, there's St. Augustine's Confessions, which is, justly world famous. Um, Also, St. John of Kronstadt, and pretty much all the priests of his generation were told to, and many of them did, keep these very detailed spiritual diaries. Um, and St. John of Kronstadt, of course, ends up selecting portions of that diary to publish as My Life in Christ. There's also the very famous and very excellent diary of a Russian priest um, by Elchaninov. So you don't want to lose sight of the fact that these things can be used for good. You can use writing about yourself autobiographically, either privately, or well, privately, obviously, to examine yourself, if that's a way that you can process things. Additionally, when it comes to, I guess, one last note um, in terms of seeking the good, really thinking about demons is not is not usually very helpful. And trying to sort of get into their head and fight them is not a pleasant or a spiritually beneficial thing to do 99.99% of the time. And the Desert Fathers, some of the early Desert Fathers do kind of do that and try to talk to demons and find out what they're up to and that kind of thing. But within the sayings of the Desert Fathers, I'm thinking of the alphabetical sayings of the Desert Fathers, that was translated and compiled by Benedicta Ward. I forget which of the fathers it is, but they start telling people not to do that. And even further, they tell people not even to sort of fight evil thoughts or temptations or past memories. They tell them just to ignore them. And that becomes the standard advice. The Philokalia is full of it. You just want to cut it off and not talk, not engage with the thought. Father Thomas Hopko has a very good lecture on Ancient Faith Radio called something like Our Thoughts, Memories, and Desires, something like that. I don't recall offhand. But it's excellent, and he talks about this process and how it's been talked about in Orthodox Church history, so you can go look that up. Additionally, sort of the summary of that advice, though, that I think is really good is if you go to Orthodox Teaching of the Elders, there will be a video of Elder Porphyrios. I'll put a link in the description to this video, along with links to the books I mentioned. So Elder Porphyrios says, when evil comes, you shouldn't fight it. What you should do is you should run crying, "Daddy, Daddy, Baba, Baba," to Christ. Because ultimately, what we want to do is not focus on evil or any of those things. We don't want to fight evil. That's not our goal. We fight evil best by not being evil and by being good and filling ourselves with Christ and with His love, and by loving the things that He loves, our neighbors, the saints, His church. So anyway, I don't think it's good to focus too much on the demons or even topics related to them. As one last note, C.S. Lewis, when he wrote the Screwtape letters, he said it was one of the hardest and most miserable things he had ever done, because putting himself into the shoes of demons trying to tempt mortals is a very harrowing thing. Now, that book is very good and very useful. He had a lot of insights in it, but he attested himself that you don't want to put yourself in that mental place. So don't. Focus on Christ, focus on love, and the gospel. Thank you, and if anyone has more questions, please feel free to send them to me.